Hi divers, Alec, Peirce again from Vintage Scuba. Scuba 2000, and this playlist is called Vintage Scuba. Information, you know, just some fun things about the evolution of diving gear. I'm going to talk maybe a little later about diving itself. I did talk about how we compensated for weights because we didn't have buoyancy compensators and all that kind of neat stuff. So hopefully you pick up some ideas and learn a little bit about where this wonderful sport came from, how gear developed, because it developed. It wasn't just invented overnight, and a whole lot of fun. I'm enjoying this, and I hope you're picking up some ideas and having fun too. I promised that I would try to show you a piece of weird equipment. A lot of there's still weird equipment around, but over the past 60 years that I've been diving, there's been a lot of weird equipment, stuff that showed up and everybody was crazy about it, but it didn't turn out very well, and so it's disappeared. Let me see if I can show you one of those today before we start talking about buoyancy compensators. This is called the SCUDA. Now this is not really vintage. Vintage, by definition, among the vintage divers means anything older than 1975, preferably the 50s and 60s, but certainly older than 75. This is actually later than that. But you may or may not have heard of this. This is called the SCUDA. Not scuba, SCUDA with a D. Yes, and you see this pretty girl on there with a piece of equipment and she's got this bag on. What the heck is that? Well, SCUDA is, or was, I should say, the self-contained underwater drinking apparatus. Yeah, that's kind of neat. Self-contained underwater drinking apparatus. You could buy these. They weren't expensive, 25 or 30 bucks, and they were pretty neat. Not available anymore, except maybe as new old stock or something in some old dive stores. But they were pretty neat. Let me explain how the SCUDA worked. It was actually pretty neat. So what you did was, when you opened the box, you found this pretty bag. You get them in different colors. I have pink ones and blue ones and yellow ones. A little bag like this, you see. And it's attached to a hose. And there's a little tap. There's actually a tap, a little tap on here to turn it off and on. And then another hose goes to your mouthpiece over here, you see. And it's attached to the side of the mouthpiece. And if you were able to see this up close, you'd see there's actually a hole in the bite tab. So you would take the mouthpiece off your regulator and install this on your regulator, okay? And then the bag is Velcro, has Velcro on it, and the bag would wrap around to the hose of the regulator. So it would look something like this. I've taken this modern regulator. We'll put the first stage behind me. And so here's my second stage, and here's my SCUDA attached to the hose, and I've replaced the mouthpiece. I didn't really, but you see the idea. That's pretty neat. So now you put into the bag, through the big hole on top, your favorite drink. Yes, so you can put in apple juice, water, if you wanted to. Anything, as long as it says in the instructions, don't put anything in with pulp. So you couldn't put in fresh squeezed orange juice because the pulp in the orange would jam up the tubes and so on. But any of your favorite drinks you could put in there. Rum and Coke was my favorite, and there's no pulp in rum and Coke, so you put that in there. And I'm kidding, of course. Or am I? Let me think. Anyway, so you put your favorite drink, and now you're swimming along, and you all know from your diving experience that it's very easy to get dry mouth. You get dry mouth, particularly if you're diving in the tropical waters and in seawater in a warm climate, and with the dry air that we use in scuba diving, your mouth gets very, very dry. So after a while, you say, oh my gosh, my mouth is dry. What do? Oh, it's really simple. Turn on the tap and squeeze the bag. Oh, that's great. Take a couple of swallows and turn the tap off and keep on diving. Great idea, huh? One of those weird things that did show up, and this was around for several years. You could buy these for quite a while. However, not anymore. Obviously, it did not become mainstream. Manufacturers didn't start adding the SCUDA to their regulators when they produced them. Just one of those interesting and weird items that appeared in the scuba diving market over the years. What I want to talk about in this particular tip is just take a few minutes and talk to you about buoyancy compensators. Buoyancy compensators are a big part, a very important part of scuba diving today. And they have made diving so easy. When I started diving, there was nothing like this. There was nothing, not even old BCs of any sort, no life vests. See, when I started diving, divers wouldn't wear life vests anyway. They were kind of wimpy, you know. You had a 12-inch dive knife. What else is there to worry about? But we'll talk about that in a second. But buoyancy compensators now are fantastic instruments. They're reliable. They do a wonderful job of allowing you to go up, go down, or stay neutral. They're comfortable. They're designed, as you know, to hold your tank on. They come with weight integrated systems. They're good looking. They can carry stuff on them. This is a pretty typical modern buoyancy compensator. Lightweight. This actually has stretchy stretchy air cell. I don't know how to do that. Waterproof, airtight, and stretchy too. But they're beautiful and light, easy to travel with. But they didn't first look like that. Let me explain. When I first started diving in the late 50s, early 60s, there was nothing at all available. Now, that's not exactly true. Some divers were advocating wearing a vest, what we called a vest. And they really were a vest. They were like a life vest. In fact, the very earliest ones, I have a couple of samples, which I may show you again later. The very earliest ones were ex-US Navy or US Air Force life vests. And they're wrapped around your neck and came down in front with a couple of straps. They were called the Mae West Vest. Mae West Vest. Now, some of you older divers may know who Mae West was, and so you might smile when you realize why we called them the Mae West Vest. If you don't know who Mae West was, then Google Mae West, M-A-E West, W-E-S-T. She was a famous actress in the 40s and 50s, and she had some fantastic talents. Acting wasn't one of them. Anyway, Google Mae West and you'll maybe understand why we call them the Mae West Vest. This is one of the very earliest examples of a Mae West vest or a life vest, which could be called a buoyancy compensator, although we didn't know about buoyancy compensation at the time, so we didn't call it that. That exists. And this was actually made by a scuba diving company. Healthways was a very, very big scuba diving company at the time. Healthways, one of the biggest ever. And this was very similar to the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy vest that we used to wear that we picked up at the war surplus store. And like those, we'd put it over your head like this. And this was called the horse collar vest. If you didn't call it Mae West, you called it a horse collar. And it's strapped around your tummy and up through your crotch. So it's nice and tight to your body like this, you see. And you could use this as a life vest. It wasn't really a buoyancy compensator because it was virtually impossible to put air into it when you were underwater. So you couldn't add buoyancy underwater. Very, very difficult. The only way to put air into this is with this little tiny tube, and you push down to the end, blow a bit of air in. But it's very difficult to do underwater with the regulator and all that juggling around. So these were really for use on the surface. If you were very, very tired at the end of a dive, a long swim ahead of you, and maybe you were heavy, you still had your weight belt on, and the seal tank we wore in those days was very cumbersome and heavy at the end of the dive, you're already tired, then you could inflate your Mae West vest or horse collar, and it would hold you on the surface, allow you to get back to shore safely. The vest in the early days, in fact for a long time, right up until the 80s, also had another feature. And this feature is a carryover as well from the U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force vests. They had a CO2 cartridge mounted on it, and you could inflate the vest with the CO2 cartridge. You may have heard of this if you've been in diving for a while, and you know that they're not used anymore. They use a small CO2 cartridge. You can see it here. Carbon dioxide cartridge in the mechanism. And when you pulled on this in an emergency, if you pulled on this, it blew the vest up instantly. So only on the surface. If it did this underwater, one of two things would happen. If you were shallow, it would blow it up and yank you to the surface very quickly. If you were very deep, 60 feet or more, nothing happened. Because the pressure of the water was greater than the pressure in the cartridge. So this was really a surface device only. I don't know how many of you have seen this work, but it's something like this. See how it works? It's really reliable. It really works well. This one actually has been tied off, and I apologize for that. I tie these off so they don't fire accidentally. And this one was tied off. I forgot to untie it. Little safety thing. Let's try that again. That's all there is to it. And you're on the surface. Ooh, that's cold. Well, sure, the gas is just expanded. When gas expands, compressed gas expands, it gets cold. So just put them on the surface. You see, this was a life vest. It's not used anymore. Might seem like a neat idea, but first of all, these mechanisms were very unreliable. They constantly failed to fire, constantly froze up, corroded, and so on. The cartridges were not very reliable, they weren't inexpensive. And even worse than that, this vest is now full of carbon dioxide. Not a dangerous gas, but not life-supporting. So if you now put this in your mouth, pushed on the button, your lungs would fill with carbon dioxide. Definitely not good. So since in the last 15 to 20 years, the CO2 cartridge has completely disappeared. At one time, it was a staple of scuba diving. Pretty neat, huh? Now, I have a little bit of air out of this. The only way to let the air out so I can get this off of my head. But now you've actually seen an old horse collar, Mae West vest, fired and filled with CO2 cartridge. You're not going to see that. I don't think you'll see it anywhere else. Let's take that off. There it goes. So that's what it looked like at first. Now, again, the diving companies, as these became more and more popular, they developed them. They became better, more sophisticated. So this one you see has, once again, it has the inflator ready for on the surface, and it has the CO2 cartridge here, down here. It's built into the inside, so you can't really see it. But it has pockets. Whoa, that's got to be handy. You can put things in the pockets, you see. So you see, it's becoming a more useful tool. More and more divers were realizing, gosh, this is a good idea. So more and more divers were buying it. So now the gear companies started to make them better, add more features, so they were better for the diver. And this one zippers up, so it's a bit easier on and off. You don't have to force your head through. So this is a good one. And this was made by a company that was also a big company at one time, SwimMaster, a large company as well. That's another development of the Mae West Vest, a little better. Now this is different. You notice the difference on this? Let me see. I think you can, it's too small for my head. Oh, my head's too big. That's what it is. A little difference. Look at it. Cartridge, same thing. Strap around the tummy. Some of these are the strap to the crotch, which was a lot of fun, and it worked really, really well. But how did? What's different about this? Well, right here. You see this black knob? This is an overpressure knob. Now the overpressure knob is exactly what its name implies. What it will do, it'll release the pressure in the vest if the pressure inside is too great, so the vest won't tear, so the vest won't blow up. Well, it was interesting because it's very difficult to overpressurize this vest. It's very difficult by air to put in too much air, increase the pressure too high. You couldn't do it. You can't possibly blow this over pressure by blowing hard on this. Your lungs just aren't strong enough for that. And since this is not used underwater, not commonly anyway, the likelihood of it being filled underwater and then you rising to the surface and getting too much air in this, but it was a step. They were trying to figure out, this vest can be used for other things. It's better than just a life vest on the surface. We need to see if we can't make this better for the diver. So they've included that overpressure valve. Give me a second while I take this off. Good, there we go. Out of my ears and my hair there. Oh my, good thing I don't wear earrings. So this is the next step in the evolution of the BC. What did I say? BC? Buoyancy Compensator. This is actually one of the very first buoyancy compensators, true buoyancy compensator. Life vest or horse collar. Sometimes called the horse collar BC, but pretty tough to call it a BC. This is the first BC, and the difference? What's the difference? Well, it's still got the CO2 cartridge. Okay, still got the straps and everything. It's got an overpressure valve right here. But what else has it got? Look at here. The tube has changed. Does this look familiar? Well, sure, this is like the corrugated hose that's on your BC. So now look what you can do. Underwater, you can do this. Rag out, rag back, rag out. So you see, I can put some air into this vest so that if I'm deep and I'm too negative, I can put air in the vest and make myself more positive. And then as I'm coming back to the surface and the vest starts to expand, look, I can push it in and the air comes out. This is a true buoyancy compensator. You can put air into it underwater and you can let the air out as you're ascending. So you can compensate, adjust your buoyancy. One of the first true compensators. And all because of that little device. That's all there is to it. Let's see how it developed from there. Well, lots of companies got in the bandwagon then, and they all started to make one of these buoyancy compensators, BCs we call them. And here's a typical one made by a very big company still in business today, Sherwood. This is old. This is at least from the 70s, not much later than the 70s. Same type of thing, pocket on the front. You'll notice that, I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yes, it still has a CO2 cartridge, okay? Because they didn't disappear until, gosh, into the 80s. But this is a buoyancy compensator, a horse collar buoyancy compensator. Mae West had probably gone by then, that terminology. Horse collar buoyancy compensator. And I don't know, is that microphone working okay, Kevin? I'm making an awful lot of noises. So now this has a couple of additional features. First of all, you can blow air into it, right? Just as you do today. You can let air out. It also has a dump over here, so it doesn't get overpressurized and blow up on ascent, which you can manually dump too, just as you have on your current buoyancy compensator. If you look at your own BC, you'll see you have at least one of these, if not two. So it's the same thing. What else has it got? Well, it's pretty. Oh, look down here. What's this? Oh my gosh, look, somebody has gone and added this. This is an aftermarket addition to this. What is it? This is a power inflator. This is just like the power inflator you use today. So somebody came along and they said, hey, this is a nuisance having to blow this up underwater. Regulator out, blow it right back in. I'm swallowing water. It's not safe. And they sat down and they figured out a way to hook this BC hose to the tank. It's called an inflator. Power inflator is what we call them. Power inflator when they first came out. And this was added. You could take any BC and add this onto it and clamp it in place, and you had a power inflator for your BC. Just that simple. Now, a lot of divers, they would say, well, you know, I don't want to put one of those power inflators on because they use up air from the tank. And if they use up the air, I can't stay down as long. Well, it wasn't really very long, and I think that attitude has changed. I would like to think so, because in fact, we found out, and you need to realize when I say that some of the old divers would say those things, I said those things too. I'm very slow to change, to accept innovation. I've seen so many innovation that really wasn't innovative. So I'm slow to change. But I learned pretty quickly that in fact, careful use of the power inflator saves air. That's right. If you're blowing it up and dumping air, surely use up air. But if you use it just when you need to, you get to the bottom of your dive, you're going to stop at 60 feet, a little bit of air in. That's better. It's either that or you kick like mad to hold yourself in position, which uses more air. Or kicking like mad and breathe. Same thing on the way up. On the way up, you get up where you want to stop, maybe your 15-foot stop, although that didn't become popular until into the 90s, but you want to stop and slow down, you hold it over your head, let a bit of air out. Again, that saves you having to kick with your hands and your arms to hold yourself in position. So in actual fact, careful use of the power inflator actually saved air. It took a little while before we caught on to that, but after that happened, then the power inflator, PIV it's called, power inflate valve, became common. And all BCs today have the same power inflate valve. And what happened after that? Well, basically, what happened was that this horse collar style disappeared. And we took this buoyancy compensating device, buoyancy compensator, and we actually made it into a jacket that you put on like a jacket. And we attached the tank to it. And so now you have today this modern device called a buoyancy compensator. How does it compare to the new one? Well, there's the power inflator built in by the manufacturer. This one has a neat dump. A lot of them have this now. You pull on it. There's the dump on the top. However, it still has another dump somewhere here. Here's the other dump on the back. Another dump down in here. Pull on the cord, just like that old 40-year-old Sherwood. The difference is, well, this buoyancy compensator, your tank is fastened to it. You know all this. And you put it on like a jacket. It's actually comfortable. Trust me, these were not comfortable. They pulled where they shouldn't pull, but they were. But now they're comfortable and work really, really well. That's how we got this fantastic new device. While I have you just for a minute on BCs, I want to show you a couple more neat things. Because of those divers, some divers who said, gosh, I don't want to have this hooked up to my tank, I don't want it using air, they came out with a couple of these. It looks the same, right? See, it's got the add-on power inflator. It's not the original add-on, and buoyancy compensator. This one does not have a CO2 cartridge. It has a dump here. You push or pull. You pull on this dump, jump air. But it looks almost exactly the same. But it has one thing extra. Look on the back. What's this? Well, this is actually a scuba tank, a small scuba tank. You see the white tank in there, and it comes off just like a scuba tank. You can actually take this off, and you fill this from your own scuba tank. That's right. You take this little tank, you put it onto your scuba tank, just like a regulator. Do it up, and then open this valve. Then you open the tank, and this fills up with air. That's right. So what's the benefit? Well, now your buoyancy compensator has its own air supply. There's no hose to the tank. Now, this particular gentleman who owned this BC, I don't know who it was, but this particular gentleman has everything going for him, okay? Because he installed a power inflator with the hose to the tank, right? And he also has a built-in air supply on the BC. So open this valve, push the button, and this tank will fill it. Or you can push this button, and the tank, your air tank, will fill it, just like a modern BC. These were pretty common for a number of years, through the 70s into the 80s. There were lots of these around. You may never have seen one, but they were quite common. They've disappeared now. I think, as I said earlier, most divers have accepted the fact that the power inflate valve is fantastic. So easy to use. A little bit of air in, a little bit of air out. If they're used judiciously and properly, you in fact save air. It actually saves air. You get a longer dive by using this carefully. So that self-inflating type of BC that carries its own air supply has pretty much disappeared. I want to show you one more. This looks like a jacket style. You see that? It's the jacket style. Sure enough. Put your arms in, over it goes. There's your dump. There's your inflator hose. This is missing the valve in the end. I took that off, probably to help somebody. Attaches to the tank. Everything looks exactly the same, doesn't it? Everything looks the same until you go to pick it up. Oh my God! You think that buoyancy compensators with weight integration is new, don't you? No, no. Early 70s. Early 70s. This company, and others as well, came up with a great idea. They said, let's build the weights into the buoyancy compensator. So you can see that in this BC, you see this long cartridge right here? In this BC, there's a big container, if you like, in there. That container is full of marbles and lead shot. Marbles and lead shot. Well, the lead shot obviously is weight. So you can put as much weight as you wanted. If you needed 15 pounds of weight in order to dive, you put 15 pounds of lead shot in there. What's with the marbles? Well, practical thing. If you put in 15 pounds of lead shot, the lead shot would only come to here. So when you turn down, the lead shot will all rush to the front. It would bang around and rattle around. So what we did was we put in a bit of lead shot, a bunch of marbles, lead shot, and we filled it with a mixture of lead shot and marbles. So the weight is spread over the whole backpack and it doesn't rattle around in there. Weight integrated BC from the 70s. How about that? Well, how do you get rid of the weights? Well, down here at the bottom, I don't know if I can get this up here so Kevin can get a picture of it. You see this little lever down here with the safety clip on it? If you yank on that, the bottom door opens. And all the lead weight and marbles falls out. It's like dumping your weight belt. No, don't ask me to do it. Do you have any idea how long it takes to get all that lead shot and marbles back? I'm not going to do it, but that's exactly what happened. You pull on that, all the weight falls out, and you're on your way to the surface. So sometimes my point with this particular device, these aren't made anymore, my point with this particular device is sometimes when you think of something, wow, that'd be neat if they did that, it's already been done in most cases. Or a company comes out with a great idea, weight integration built into the backpack. Usually I can go to my vast vintage collection upstairs and wander around and I can find that device. Same as what they just brought out as a brand new and exciting device. Those new plastic second stages, so lightweight. First rig I had, 1958. Second stage was plastic. How about those neat new second stages that are sideways in your mouth and the air bubbles out beside you rather than in front of you? They'd be neat. Hey, they have some of those in the market now. Second regulator I ever owned was plastic, had side exhaust, 1962. There's very few things in scuba that are new. They're better materials, better developed, work better, and so on, but not always new. So be careful of that. Anyway, there's some information on BCs, how BCs came along. Maybe there's some ideas in there, some thoughts, and some interesting stuff that you didn't know that might help you to appreciate this wonderful sport a little bit more. I'm going to go now. We'll talk to you again soon. Alec Peirce from Vintage Scuba. I hope you enjoyed that.